Coming up on this episode of Nintendo Cartridge Society, because Marble Madness is just one game, we come up with a whole list of the 8 best NES games. It's dangerous to go alone, so the Nintendo Cartridge Society goes with you. Welcome to Nintendo Cartridge Society. My name is Patrick Ellers, and I am joined, as always, by my co-host, Mark Mitchell.
What's up, dude?
Hey, weird.
What if that just became my thing? I'm just like a...
What's up, dude? If that became your thing?
Yeah, what if I'm just like a chill, laid-back
one of
dude
one of the
now?
ways I would describe you now is high-strung. What we need to do to change Mark Mitchell is to have him more laid back, I think.
Yeah, go from Mark to whatever the Mark version of Stefan is.
Mork?
Yeah, go from Mark to Mork.
We have got serious business to get down to today, but before we do, thank you all of you for listening. We would love for you to be our friends on the Nintendo Switch. You can find our friend codes in the description of this episode.
Another thing that we'd love for you to do is review us on Apple Podcasts.
Yeah.
Or wherever you listen to this podcast.
Right. And if you want something like us to read a guest weather for you, and you can either put that into a review, or if you're reviewing us somewhere that's not Apple Podcasts, you can send us an email, or you can also just send us an email and we'll do it too. The email address is Nintendo Cartridge Society
at gmail.com.
That's how we got all of the emails that we're going to be reading today.
Which is quite a few.
Thank you, everyone, for participating in this list. It is going to be a knockdown, drag-out fight between us, and at least we're dragging all of you into it. Here's another thing you can do with that email address. You can borrow my copy of Sonic Forces.
That's right. Send your mailing address or a mailing address.
Yeah, sure. You can put someone else on this list if you want. Confuse the hell out of them. Where did this copy of Sonic Forces come from? They'd say. It costs you nothing.
Yeah,
to do
it
so.
costs you nothing. You'll go in the queue,
Mm-hmm.
and eventually Sonic Forces will be making its way to you.
Yes, and then it can come back, and everyone is happy, right?
What's that email address again?
Nintendo Cartridge Society
At gmail.com.
Mark, we obviously have a lot of work ahead of us, so shall we get into it?
Let's do it. So, Patrick, here's something I learned when I was doing a little bit of research for this list. There were over 700 NES games released in the United States.
And we are narrowing it down. If you're not familiar with our lists, we are coming up with a list of the 8 best NES games. And this is not a ranking. These are going to be in any order. And the list, when we are done with it, will be definitive.
Indisputable.
That's right. They will be the 8 best NES games. There are other good NES games, probably, but these 8 are the best. No ifs, ands, or buts. And if you feel like we make a wrong move here, you should have emailed us harder.
Here's another thing to keep in mind.
Please.
We're only choosing one game per series. Because
Yes.
obviously there's an argument for all 3 Super Mario Brothers on here.
Right.
Potentially both Zeldas. I don't know. Multiple Mega Men.
Right. Well, certainly multiple Mega Men. There are like 100 of them on the NES. So yeah, those are the arbitrary. Oh, and last arbitrary rule that we are adhering to: this must be an NES game that was available in North America.
That's right. No Famicom exclusives.
Mm-hmm. No weird European only. They didn't really play NES games, right?
Yeah.
Back me up, Mark.
There are some games that are exclusive to regions outside of the United States and outside of Japan.
Yeah.
Europe.
We're not counting those. Just North American NES games. So, Mark, how did you said you looked and you saw that there were over 700 games. How did you approach your list? And we will be getting into our personal lists in a bit. We'll probably read some others first, but just how did you approach it?
Man, best NES game is really tough
Yeah.
because we're not saying the way I took it was not most influential,
Right.
not like the most beloved, but best. And so there are some like kind of gimme picks on my list, but there are also a few that are like personal to me that I personally consider the best because that's my experience with them.
Yes, I also went pretty personal on my list. I think one thing I would like to get out of the way nice and early here because we've split the emails up between us, and appearing on every single one of the lists in front of me is Super Mario Brothers 3.
So there are a few people here in my stack who don't necessarily agree with that. Well, maybe one person.
All right.
Adam wrote in his picks.
Yeah, let's get all of Adam's picks.
Okay. So Adam's picks are 1 Super Mario 2,
Okay.
Castlevania 2, Final Fantasy 2, Kid Icarus, Metroid, Mega Man, Star Tropics,
Okay.
Legend of Zelda.
Okay. So, first of all, Final Fantasy 2 didn't make it to the States. So, we got to throw out the whole list, right? We
No.
got to throw out all of Adam's list.
Okay, Super Mario 2. Here's the thing.
Yeah.
I thought long and hard about putting Super Mario 2 on my list,
You did?
but it just, for me personally, feels dishonest to
Yeah.
put it there when Mario Brothers 3, I think, is clearly the one to go here.
Super Mario Brothers 3 is a shockingly complete video game experience, right? Like when you play a lot of other NES games today, you're like, "Oh, I see like one good, one fun idea. I see something that is fun to like iterate on for like 15 minutes and then like, okay, I'm probably done with it." Or, you see the sort of like more obtuse like Final Fantasy or Zelda where it's like, okay, you spend a lot of time with it, but it's really like it's the one loop over and over again. And I feel like Super Mario Brothers 3 realized what a Mario game could be, in a way like that's the first time that Mario feels like that, right? Where you're like exploring the Mushroom Kingdom in a way that feels like exploration, where every world is like a new, novel, weird experience. Like it is so self-similar. It is so Mario, in a way that Super Mario Brothers 2 and even the original Super Mario Brothers aren't. Like and is for my money one of just the best games ever made. I forget where we put it on our list of Super Mario Brothers games. But like for me, Super Mario Brothers 3, which is on my list, like it's just got to be on there.
Yeah, it's not that Super Mario Brothers and Super Mario Brothers 2 aren't amazing games,
Right.
but on the same system as Super Mario Brothers 3, and if we can only pick one per series,
Yeah.
it's got to be Super Mario Brothers 3.
Would you like to talk about the other games on Adam's list as long as we've got it pulled up?
Sure. Castlevania 2. A weird choice for a Castlevania, in my opinion.
Now, I'm not saying that either you or I put a Castlevania game on our list, but if we did,
It would not be Castlevania 2.
it would be 3, right?
Yes.
Because the original Castlevania, I do have a place for it in my heart. But Simon's Quest is a mess, right? Like the only thing that's cool about it is the "What a Night for a Curse," right?
It's super ambitious,
Yes.
but the hardware doesn't support it.
And not only does the hardware not support it, it is horribly localized to the point where the clues that the villagers give you are basically gibberish, and like you need to understand what they're saying, otherwise you can't progress in the game. So it's one of those that's like maybe it's fun in Japan or in like a different translation or something, but like wow, it just doesn't work the way it is.
Final Fantasy 2.
Okay, and again, I think we should throw
There
out the
has to have been
whole
a Final
list.
Fantasy 2 at some that was released here though, right? Because
The Final Fantasy 2 that was released in the United States was on Super Nintendo. It was Final Fantasy 4 in Japan.
oh,
The Final Fantasy 2 that was released on NES was not released on NES. It was released on Famicom.
I'm gonna say Adam made an honest mistake. Kid Icarus. No.
Okay.
No.
Mark, Adam, just so you know, Mark went from defending you to shaking his head. Doesn't know what to do with you.
No. Metroid. Okay. Here's the thing.
Yeah.
Metroid is a milestone game,
Yes.
and it was an influential game. I don't think Metroid's very much fun. I would not put it on the. It is not on my list of 8 best.
It is also not on my list, especially when um other iterations of Metroid achieve what that first game is going for so much better. Super Metroid, Fusion, Zero Mission are all worlds better than the original Metroid. So like it's kind of hard for me to, one of the criteria that I looked for when coming up with my list was like, is it fun for me to play now? If someone's like, oh yeah, we can spend the afternoon playing Metroid, I'm gonna be like, let's do something else. Yeah, but so that's where I stand on Metroid.
Okay, Mega Man. The
first-
original. That's
the
seemingly
first Mega Man.
Mhm.
It's the worst of the Mega Man games on the NES.
Star Tropics.
Now you know I loves me some Star Tropics.
Okay, and then Legend of Zelda. Now, is Legend of Zelda another gimme? It is on my list.
So it is not on my list.
Wow.
And I want to save. Let's talk about the virtues of the Legend of Zelda, but I want to save my reasons for not having it on the list until we encounter it on someone else's list. Am I making sense?
Sure.
Okay, great. So why is Zelda?
So
on
so
your
this
list?
is one where it's like the Metroid thing a little bit, except I think the Legend of Zelda can still be fun to play.
Yeah, I agree with that. And well, Legend of Zelda also, like it achieves something that most of the other Zelda games don't get to, right? Of like being so obtuse and really feeling like you are, like the wasteland of Hyrule feels lonely and feels dangerous in that game way more than like any Zelda game since, except for like Breath of the Wild.
Yeah, it's interesting because I don't like value the difficulty in Legend of Zelda. I don't enjoy the fact that it's just like, hey, like figure this out.
Yeah.
The only times that I have really like played the Legend of Zelda, I used a guide and I enjoyed that way more. I think what I appreciate about this game is um that it's fun for me to see how many pieces of like the Zelda puzzle have existed from the very beginning.
Yeah.
And like the stuff that I do like about the Legend of Zelda series across all the games, a lot of it is there from the beginning. Like
Yeah.
the structure, that was pretty much cemented with Link to the Past,
Yeah.
and then re-cemented with Ocarina of Time. Like
And
so
then
many
re-cemented with Twilight Princess.
right, like so many games follow that like Zelda formula, but again, that's not really what I enjoy in the series.
Yeah.
I enjoy like the placemaking and being in a world that is like as well realized as the best Zelda games are. And I feel like for the limitations of the NES, they were able to achieve something like that with the Legend of Zelda. That even like the second game, the Adventures of Link, like it feels more generic to me, like generic fantasy than
that's
the first
interesting.
game does.
I'm just gonna rip the Band-Aid off here. I included Zelda 2, The Adventure of Link, on my list, partially because it's a game that I actually played as a kid, and I didn't get around to playing the original Zelda until I was much older. But the combat in Zelda 2 is so much more like involved and like twitchy. Like the actual moment to moment combat is more engaging, as far like that's how I relate to the game, is on a combat level. And having the like 8 spells that you learn throughout the course of the game and the like leveling up system, I guess you're right, does make it more of like a generic fantasy game, and less like a very specific Zelda game. But I don't know. I liked it. I liked the towns. I like meeting people with weird names like Error and like having to get them things like you find someone's lost trophy. What is that? What's going on in Hyrule? Um so I know at some point we will have to whittle it down between Zelda and Zelda 2, but I would say that yeah, that's the next gimme that we have to sort of contend with. Would you like maybe I should read a list? Okay. So this is Steven's list. Steve says, "Hey guys, I didn't have time to do extensive research that I usually do, but I'm going to throw games off the top of my head. Note, this is not my era, so I don't have much knowledge of the entire library. I'm not even going to pretend my list is perfect. So take it with a grain of millennial salt. Thanks, Steven. Number 1, Super Mario Brothers 3. Very good. Number 2, Mega Man 2. A fine candidate for a Mega Man game on this list. Number 3, Duck Hunt. Number 4, Gradius. Number 5, The Legend of Zelda. Number 6, Ice Hockey. Number 7, The Adventures of Lolo. And then in the 8th spot, he says, leaving 8 open for Star Tropics. Thank you, Steven. Mark, what do you think about those that we haven't talked about yet? Duck Hunt.
I've got Duck Hunt on my list.
You've got Duck Hunt on your list?
I have Duck Hunt on my list.
Can you tell me why Duck Hunt is on your list?
This is one of those, like, personal picks where I know that Duck Hunt was an evolutionary dead end.
Right?
We had one Duck Hunt. It was fun. The light gun was fun for its time. It's mostly a nostalgia pick.
Yeah, that makes sense. It is here's the thing. It's a good game, but it does, for me, represent what I was talking about before of like something that I can play for 15 minutes, maybe 10 minutes, and then I'm like, okay, I get it. And like maybe there's something to master in there, but like you've got to have this sort of like maniacal, just like will to get perfect at it in order for it to like be an experience that I'm like super excited about.
Yeah, I can totally appreciate that.
Other games on this list: Gradius, Ice Hockey, and The Adventures of Lolo. I like Ice Hockey. Ice Hockey's great. It's not on my list.
Yeah.
Mark is shaking his head no.
And great.
I'll sell out that head shake every time, every chance I get. Mark.
That's fine. Gradius. I personally have no love for side-scroller shoot 'em ups.
Yeah. It is. I think it's a tough genre, right? That like, it's another one where 30 seconds in, you're like, okay, I see what this is. And I don't know where it's fun from here.
Yeah.
And then The Adventures of Lolo is a fun and interesting pick.
I've never played it.
They're good games. I mean, it's all just like top down, pushing blocks around, sort of puzzle games.
It's coming to the NES Switch Online at some point, right? Wasn't that in the list of games that was announced?
I think possibly even in November, maybe December. But yeah, I like that game a lot, and I'm looking forward to picking it up. I don't have it on my list. But Steven, I think that's a good inclusion, and maybe even one that we should consider weaseling onto our list. Although it's only 8, so we'll see.
Here's a couple of other reader suggestions. Chase wrote in to say that for your NES list, you definitely need to include Zelda, Mario, and Donkey Kong. Didn't specify which ones, maybe the first of each.
Zelda, Mario, and Donkey Kong.
There's a good chance all 3 of those will end up on here.
Here's the one thing I love Donkey Kong, right? The original Donkey Kong is a game that I love dearly.
Uh-huh.
The problem is the NES version of it is incomplete. It is missing the second level. It jumps from it just goes 1, 2, 3 through the same 3 levels in succession. If we had to put a Donkey Kong game on this list, and I'm not saying that we do, I would think it would have to be Donkey Kong Jr., because Donkey Kong Jr., in my mind, is almost as good as the original Donkey Kong, and it is feature complete on the NES. So
I think somebody wrote in agreeing with you. I can't find it on my list, though.
About Donkey Kong Jr.?
Yeah, about Donkey Kong Jr. While you're looking, DM wrote in with their list. Mario 3 on there, baby.
Oh, yeah.
Legend of Zelda, Final Fantasy, the original, I'm assuming. Ninja Turtles 2, the arcade one, they specify. Duck Hunt, DuckTales. Oh, that's another vote for Duck Hunt. DuckTales, Dragon Warrior, Dragon Quest, and Pac-Man. Honorable mentions go to Metroid, Castlevania, and Mega Man.
Okay, so some interesting things in here. DuckTales. DuckTales is on my list.
So DuckTales is not on my list, but Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers is on my list.
Oh, that is. When is the last time you went back to Chip 'n Dale's Rescue Rangers?
With the Disney Afternoon Collection on the PS4.
Okay, so that's the last time I went back to DuckTales as well.
We are at a standoff.
No, we are probably going to be at a standoff. I don't think we can include both those games.
No, I don't think we can. That wouldn't be honest.
Right.
But I think fitting that a game from that like Capcom Disney platforming era
Totally
makes its way on the list. One of the games I was like briefly considering putting on here is Adventures in the Magic Kingdom, which is a Capcom game where you kind of like go to the different attractions at like a Disneyland or Magic Kingdom style park. It's not a very good game.
I just realized I did not put Mickey Mouse Capades on my list.
Oh, well, I mean,
too late? Is that what you're about
I was
to
going to
say?
say too late, but also like, why did you tell me? You could put it on your list.
I don't know. Well, and also it's not like the list is locked. Look, nothing is definitive until we
but
end
I'm
the episode.
now. But if you try to put Mickey Mouse Capades on here, I'm going to be like, no, that wasn't on your list.
Hold on, I wasn't done with with Dustin's list there.
Well, it's not. It's Dustin, as far as I know. It's DM.
Oh, okay. I believe this person's name is Dustin, but I might be wrong. The Pac-Man. What do you think about that? What do you think about Pac-Man being on?
You know, I was trying to remember if because I definitely played Pac-Man on the NES. But I can't remember if it's like an arcade, if it's like a good version of the arcade game.
Yeah, and I mean, I think even if it is, you want to miss Pac-Man, right?
Yeah, again, like Duck Hunt or any other arcade game, Pac-Man has a short shelf life for me.
Yeah, totally. An arcade game with not a short shelf life, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, the arcade game. That is a good game. It is another one where, like, when you compare it to the arcade game that it is based on, man, the NES version of it looks crummy. It's got 2 extra levels. But you can only play, 2-player instead of 4 like you can in the arcade, and like it just looks bad. I recently played the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles arcade game at Button Mash just last week before going to the Drac and the Swamp Rat show, and that game is great and beautiful in arcades, and like I can easily recall what that game looked and sounded like on the NES. Like I haven't touched it in 15 years, right? 20 years probably. But like I can instantly recall what it looks like on the NES. And man, it's got nothing on the arcade version. Also, there is a far superior arcade style Ninja Turtles beat 'em up called Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3: The Manhattan Project, which is in fact on my list. Each of the turtles has their own special move. You push both attack and jump at the same time, and they do it. It takes away a little sliver of life, like most arcade games of that era, and it is awesome. Tells a really cool story where the island of Manhattan gets lifted up into the sky. It's an amazing game. I think it's far superior to Ninja Turtles 2, the arcade game.
I feel like there's a good chance that a lot of franchises that people love are going to be on this list, or we will touch on a lot of them, but like the specific game that people hold dear won't necessarily make our final list.
Right. I want to use that list as a little bit of a pivot point on a game that we have not yet discussed here to the Mighty Magnus's list. The Mighty Magnus writes in and says, I hope it's not too late. It is not, Magnus. You're right on time. His list goes Super Mario Brothers 3, yes. Castlevania 3, Metroid, The Legend of Zelda, Ninja Gaiden, Tecmo World Wrestling, Final Fantasy, and Mega Man 2. So I bring this up specifically because Final Fantasy was on the last list.
Yeah, I'm actually a little bit surprised at the amount of love that the original Final Fantasy is getting from listeners.
Well, so here's an interesting thing is that I do sort of like that game even now for how like janky and broken it is. Like with a guide and sitting down, you and I together playing it. That's probably the NES game that I've spent the most time with. Well, excepting a game that we have not brought up yet, which I maintain no one will convince me is not perfect, but we'll get to that in a moment. That this is a game that like I actually really have fun playing as a adult man. Um, Other interesting games on here, Ninja Gaiden and Tecmo World Wrestling. I don't know Tecmo World Wrestling.
Yeah, I don't either.
And Ninja Gaiden, those games are fun. I don't know. I think they're all too hard.
Yeah, I have never defeated a 2D Ninja Gaiden game. There is just too much for me.
Yeah. I mean, we're bad at games, so
So what are you gonna do? You know, Dustin, nay DM, they included Dragon Warrior on their list, Dragon Quest. And that would be my pitch, not the first one. I actually have Dragon Warrior 3 on my list, and that would be my pitch for like the JRPG to include, just because it's a little bit more and it's a lot more refined than than the original Final Fantasy is. I think it has all of the elements that you enjoy about the original Final Fantasy game, but just in a more enjoyable form, like a more refined form.
Yeah, I think that's right. I have not played much of Dragon Warriors 2 and 3, but I had rented them as a kid and mostly just recognized them to be like good versions of the original Dragon Warrior, which is a game that I did play a bunch of and loved. But as in the same way that I loved any game that I was kind of stuck with. We've got a little bit more substantial list here from Jason. Jason writes, here are my votes for the top 8 NES games. Number 1, Super Mario Brothers 3, simply the best game ever made. Number 2, Legend of Zelda, a fun adventure back in the day and still a good game today, though far from the best Zelda game. So it's kind of sticking it to Zelda. You're like, you're not the best. Number 3, Kirby's Adventure. First appearance of Kirby's Adventure. A great platformer with a unique power absorption mechanic. The best non-Mario level-based platformer on the system, in my opinion.
Wow. Yeah. That's high praise.
And like the game does have, I mean, that's where the power stealing mechanic is like established, right? Number 4, Metroid, atmospheric sci-fi adventure that was not the norm. Great music, great level design. Changed so little when developing it into Zero Mission is really a testament to the original's quality. I think they changed a ton when they upgraded it to Zero Mission.
And I think upgrade is the right term.
Yeah, I think tore it down to its nuts and bolts and then rebuilt it completely is how I would describe it. Donkey Kong Jr., this is the... Okay, Jason, I know I was just talking smack, but Donkey Kong Jr. is his number 5. Best version of Donkey Kong on the system with a unique protagonist and complicated timing puzzles. Bonus points for having the NES mascot as the antagonist. Great point. Number 6, Bubble Bobble, another excellent puzzle platformer. Cute characters, colorful visuals, fair gameplay. One of the few NES games with simultaneous multiplayer that allowed for a good player to carry a younger player without ruining either's fun. That's a great point about the co-op in Bubble Bobble. I have played Bubble Bobble with people both better at games than me and people worse at games than me.
And that music sure is an earworm.
Oh yeah, and it doesn't stop even between levels. It
never stops.
Going.
It's unstoppable. It's like the Terminator.
It is. That's what the music is, of course. Dun 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 dun. We're not quite done with Jason's list here. Number 7, Hogan's Alley. Elaborates. Duck Hunt may have sold more, but its arcade gameplay lacked variety and became stale fairly quickly unless players changed it up with house rules. E.g., stand behind this mark for the next round. Hogan's Alley had a variety of play modes, headlined by the titular Hogan's Alley course. You ever play Hogan's Alley?
I don't think so.
It's got like the sort of like police lineup sort of shooter mechanics. So like there's a mode where it's just 3 targets like come out and then they all flip around and it's like shoot this guy and you got to shoot him. It's got another mode where it's like a backdrop of like a city and like they pop up behind like windows and stuff. And then I believe it also has the like shooting the can and like keeping the can in the air, which is good variety and better variety than Duck Hunt. I don't know, it doesn't have the what's so great about Duck Hunt, and if it makes it onto our list, it is partially because of this. The design of Duck Hunt is perfect.
And the personality of the dog.
Personality of the dog, and like the way the ducks look, the way the grass looks, the game, like the presentation of it, especially considering the limitations of the system, perfect. Looks great.
I always confuse Hogan's Alley with what was the like platformer that uses the light gun? The Gumshoe or something?
Yeah.
Yeah, I always confuse those games.
And then number 8 on Jason's list, Tengen Tetris. My heart votes for Dr. Mario, but since that isn't an option due to Super Mario Bros. 3, I'll go with the best version of Tetris on NES. Why? 3 simple words. 2 simultaneous players. Now, I would like to jump in at this point and say that Super Mario Bros. 3 on the list should not preclude Dr. Mario from being on this list.
Should it not?
It should not.
Okay.
It is a Dr. Mario series. This is what I was alluding to earlier. No one will convince me that Dr. Mario isn't the perfect video game. I have spent so much time playing it. Any time it has crossed my path. When it came out on the NES Classic, I like fell in love with it. My girlfriend Sarah was also like, this game is amazing, has been playing a lot of it. When the NES Switch Online came about and Dr. Mario was one of the games, guess what I spent a bunch of time playing?
Yeah, that's really where I learned to love it.
So Dr. Mario is on my list, and I think I have to count it as a separate series from Super Mario Bros. 3, or my head will explode.
Dr. Mario is not on my list. I included Tetris for the reason that I included Dr. Mario, lumped it in with like the other Mario games, but we haven't made any final decisions yet. Isaac agrees with you that Dr. Mario should be on the list.
Yep.
He writes in, so it's clear we have our big boy games such as Mega Man 2, Super Mario Bros. 3, and Castlevania. But my all-time favorite NES game is Dr. Mario. I know you guys have been playing some of it, and it makes me happy. I feel like the puzzle game hold up a lot more than the others. The puzzle games hold up a lot more than the others. So that being said, top faves. Zelda 1, Wario's Woods. Shout out for Wario's Woods.
Yep.
Star Tropics.
Yeah.
I feel like Isaac's your man. Mega Man 2 and Dr. Mario. He signs off, bam. He nailed it.
Thank you, Isaac. That is a great list. Let me ask you, Star Tropics.
So I have no love for Star Trek. I mean, like I like the game,
Right.
but I don't hold it dearly.
Star Tropics is on my list. And I recognize that this is a nostalgia-driven play by me to get it on our list of 8 best games, and I will probably let it die quietly. However, that game is an underrated and underrepresented underrated period and underrepresented in Nintendo history going forward. Both of the games in the series are good to great, and like it is one of the like things of Nintendo history that bums me out that we haven't seen another one of these things. Is just seems like a crime.
Both
Mark.
Adam and Isaac agree with you.
Okay, here's a list from Evan. He says, "Hey, Mark and Patrick, longtime listener, first time writing in. Okay, let's get the obvious ones out of the way first. Super Mario Bros. 3, Mega Man 2, Castlevania 3. Now, he's got the right idea regarding Castlevania.
Yeah, lots of love for Castlevania 3. Lots of love for Mega Man 2. I'm wondering, do you have a Mega Man game on your list, and is it Mega Man 2?
I do have a Mega Man game on my list. It is not Mega Man 2.
Interesting, because that seems to be the listener's consensus, but we will get there.
Evan goes on to say, these 3 games are pretty much undeniable. They're each the best entry in some of the best game series on the NES. That leaves 5 spots. Kirby's Adventure makes a show here. The game feels like an SNES game. It might be a little too easy, but the ability to suck up enemies and use their moves is super creative, and the game is just a really good time. Blaster Master, aka the best Metroid game on the NES. Also, the soundtrack is full of jams. Do you ever play Blaster Master?
I don't think so.
Me neither. Sorry, Evan. Wrecking Crew. And then he goes, hear me out.
I'm skeptical.
I'm skeptical too. This is one of the most underrated games in the NES library and deserves to be on this list. It's a really clever puzzle game that lets you smash walls and ladders with a hammer to clear each stage. Plus, you constantly get chased around by anthropomorphic wrenches and eggplants. What's not to like? Also, what's with eggplants in the NES? That's a great point because you can get turned into an eggplant in Kid Icarus. Many of the later stages make you feel like a genius when you finally clear them. There's even a level editor. I played through Wrecking Crew for the first time 5 years ago, so this isn't a situation where I'm blinded by nostalgia. Wrecking Crew is a brilliant puzzle game that still holds up today, and I'd honestly rather see it make the list over any of the other games I've mentioned.
Whoa,
Indeed. So we may have to. I mean, that's an impassioned plea.
That's an impassioned plea. Difficult because neither of us have played it.
Very difficult, but we will take your passion into account. The next on the list, Tetris, with the explanation, it's Tetris.
Fair.
And then Star Tropics, it's better than Legend of Zelda. Yeah, I said it. It's better. You get to fight snakes with a yo-yo. Thanks for considering my list. Love the podcast.
Wow, so 3 listeners included Star Tropics on their list.
Yeah, I do feel like I'm skewing the data a little bit just by hosting this show, that there must be some weirdos out there drawn to Star Tropics that listen to our show because I won't shut up about it.
I'd like to read this email from Lizzie. Goes, hi, Patrick and Mark. I feel the need to contribute since you've been urging listeners to write in with their favorite NES games. There's
Thank you,
only one
Lizzie.
problem, however. I am but a wee babe, born long and big emphasis on long, after the age of NES. But ignorance has never stopped anyone from sharing their opinions before, so allow me to talk out of my ass for a while. Lizzie, the floor is yours. I've played a few games on the Switch Online NES. My favorite has been Dr. Mario.
Yep.
The music is so chill. The game is relatively easy to understand, and it still has some of that good Nintendo branding in the form of Mario. I'm also going to formally request Metroid to you only because I love Samus more than life itself. What a badass. Her pixelated form may be less badass, but I love her all the same. She's a safe Smash character pick, so I'm sure her original games are nice. They are nice. Unfortunately, I don't think the original Metroid is making our list, but there's lots of great Metroid games out there. One game that I hope you do not put on your list, and I love Lizzie for including a game that she did not want on here.
I've got some do not includes on this next list.
Put on your list, but I doubt you will, is Transformers Mystery of Convoy. Oh my goodness, this game is bad. The screen right after player select flashes blue and red rapidly, hurting your eyes and your expectations. It's easily one of the worst games I've ever seen. Thanks for listening to my unqualified opinion. I'm looking forward to Sonic Forces whenever that gets around to me. Lizzie, I can guarantee you, this is a Mark Mitchell promise. Transformers Mystery of Convoy, not on our list of top 8 NES games.
Bold predictions from Mark Mitchell. We have not shared our personal lists yet. Great points on both Metroid and Dr. Mario. I think my personal I still think that our evaluation of Metroid holds water, right? That like,
but I don't think people are wrong for.
I don't think they're wrong either.
Liking it, like I don't think it's an objectively trash game. I just don't think it's very much fun.
Yeah, I hear that. Next list here is from James. He says, I want to respond to the best NES games. At some point, you may have used the phrase of all time. With that in mind, my recommendations include consideration of how great the NES games are today. Great way to approach this, James. Please include on the list The Legend of Zelda game. Great game. Holds up today. Super Mario Bros. 3. Great game. Holds up today. A little bit better than Super Mario Bros. 1 due to the items and world map. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, the arcade game. So that's 2 votes for the arcade game, and no one even seems to be aware that the Manhattan Project is a game. James goes on to say, please exclude from the list Mike Tyson's Punch-Out. This was fun at the time, but when you slap a celebrity on a game, you take the risk that they will do something terrible someday. The same is now happening to Kevin Spacey movies, and they are moving down a bit in popularity. Great point. Mike Tyson is in this game. He's a monster. Also to exclude from the list, Super Mario Brothers 2 is a very difficult game or a very different game from the other Mario games. I enjoyed it a lot, but not nearly as much as Super Mario Brothers 3. I think it is better than a lot of NES games that will probably make the list. Have fun whittling it down, James. So I guess the new contribution there is another vote for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, the arcade game. We did also get one submission here on Twitter from Super Gamejoy at Super Gamejoy. His first is Bubble Bobble. Let's get this one out of the on the list right now. Bubble Bobble, probably the best co-op game on the NES, nay, ever. Super Gamejoy goes on to put Duck Hunt in his list. While this may lack depth, it more than makes up for it through its memorable and beloved zapper. Zap a duck, zap a skeet, zap brain cancer right into your friend's head. I don't know if that was actually part of the game. You can still hear the sound of the trigger being squeezed. I can.
Yep, that like spring-loaded trigger.
Yeah, and like the accompanying on the actual game itself. Number 3, Zelda 2. Controversial. The black sheep of the Zelda family. It's hard, it's different, but the music kicks ass, and the horse head, of course. So that's another Zelda 2. Double Dragon, a classic beat 'em up. Billy and Jimmy kick a Bobo off a conveyor belt. What more could you want? Look, the game makes you do platforming in it, and you can only jump by pushing both of the attack buttons at the same time. I'm going to overrule this one. Gradius, a shmup for the ages, brutal but rewarding. I can hardly reach the second level. That's a strike against it as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I'm curious what the rewarding part.
Yeah. It's rewarding how you can never get anywhere in the game. Castlevania, I still can't beat this game. Again, at Super Gamejoy seems to be a glutton for punishment. One time I defeated Dracula, but he transformed into some other monster and killed me instantly. But I love this game all the same. Metroid. Maybe we'll get a map with Metroid SP on Nintendo Switch Online. Great exploration game with brilliant atmosphere. Yeah, if there was anything to help you navigate Metroid, it would be a 10 times better game, right?
Oh yeah. As soon as you read that, I was like, I want that. I want that so much.
Yeah, give it up. And then Super Gamejoy's last entry, if you haven't guessed, I haven't already said Super Mario Brothers 3. This is the only acceptable Mario game for the list. It improves on the original in so many ways. It isn't a ROM hack of some other game from Japan.
Ooh,
take that, Lost Levels?
No.
Mario 2.
Yeah.
Look,
I was angry for a moment.
I know, you were really mad at me. All right, Mark, we've that's it. That is all the listener input.
Yeah, thank you so
everyone.
much to everybody who wrote in and shared your opinions.
We will now, Mark, I would like to hear your list, and if there's something that has not been that's not come up through the course of conversation, let's talk about it.
All right, here we go. Legend of Zelda.
Yes.
Super Mario Brothers 3.
Yes.
Castlevania 3 Dracula's Curse on my list. Maniac Mansion for the NES.
Yeah, baby.
Okay. I did not have a gaming PC.
Yes.
This was my first introduction to LucasArts point-and-click adventure games and point-and-click adventure games in general. I remember renting this game as a child. It's a great name, Maniac Mansion. Blew my mind when you didn't like directly control the characters.
Yeah.
Everything about this game blew my mind. Had no idea what I was doing.
Yeah.
Had no idea how to progress or like any of the stuff you were supposed to be doing. But still had like a blast.
Yeah.
Because it's such a like smart and funny, even in like the arguably like neutered NES version.
And that's the part of it that I think makes it the most like valuable as a like contribution for this list is like name another funny Nintendo an NES game. Name another one.
Or like an NES game that has like character and story in this way. You know, like like actual like dialogue that is
I mean, Star Tropics has actual dialogue,
but not like it's not a verbose game.
No, it not particularly.
So yeah, Maniac Mansion on there. Tetris on my list, but only on a technicality because I had disqualified Dr. Mario. Because I have recently been welcomed into the Church of Dr. Mario. It's a great game.
Yay, brother, see the light.
Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers, my pick for like a Capcom Disney licensed platformer. Dragon Warrior 3, I think the best JRPG on the NES, and Duck Hunt.
Mark, that is a good list. Here is mine. Top of the list, Dr. Mario. Number 2, Star Tropics. Number 3, Battletoads. So, Battletoads gets a bad rap because it is punishingly difficult. When you put in the time to really learn how to play the game, it is immensely rewarding. There are 12 levels in this game, and no two play alike. It is sometimes a side-scrolling brawler like Final Fight. It is sometimes a platforming game. It is frequently a level, like a vehicle-based thing, and all the vehicles control differently. And it's just there's so much variety in this game, and I just love it to death.
Do you think you would feel that way if not to litigate your choices right now, but like, do you think you would feel that way if you were playing Battletoads for the first time today, with how difficult it is? And not that is the metric that we have to measure these by, but like you're saying, it's like incredibly brutal. But once you get past that,
right,
it is rewarding. But we talked about before how like,
right, we don't have the patience for that sort of thing anymore. I honestly I don't know, because I can't. I only know the Battletoads I know. The game never felt unfair to me. Like, I always know why I die,
and that's an important distinction.
Yeah. And it just asks a lot of the player.
Is death avoidable?
Yes.
Like if
death is avoidable, extra lives are plentiful if you like discover the places to sort of like spam for them, or if you're racking up a lot of like consecutive hits on those birds in the second level, you can get a ton of extra lives.
Because my least favorite kind of platforming is the kind where like you're going along and all of a sudden just like an enemy appears in a location that like you just have to memorize that the enemy was there. There was no way that your first time through you were going to be able to avoid them.
There's some of that.
Okay.
Continuing down my list, Super Mario Brothers 3, Mega Man 3, which I believe to be the best of the NES Mega Mans. It is the Robot Masters are every bit as charismatic as they are in the second game. Mega Man gets a slide ability in this one. And after you beat all 8 Robot Masters, there's like another round of you go back into each of those levels, or 4 of those 8 levels, and they're all remixed and more difficult, and you have to fight like versions of the Robot Masters from Mega Man 2 again in this. And then there's a Dr. Wily Castle. There's just so much content in the game. Rush is introduced in this one. 2 is a great game, a wonderful game that improves on the formula that the first one sets up. And all of the other Mega Man games are taking notes from Mega Man 2, but Mega Man 3 just delivers so much.
Do you remember one of our early episodes in general, but one of the first like music episodes we did, you played a track from a Mega Man game? Do you remember, was that Mega Man 3?
Was it the Proto Man whistle thing? Yeah, that music in that game is amazing. And the music in Mega Man 2 is also amazing. The Dr. Wily's theme level 1 is one of the like quintessential, like, isn't this music great? But yeah, the Proto Man music in Mega Man 3 is like legendarily good. Rounding out my list, DuckTales, which we'll have to discuss these like head to head at some point. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3, The Manhattan Project, which I've discussed already, and Zelda 2, The Adventure of Link. Mark, how little overlap do we have in our 2 lists?
I feel like
just Super Mario Brothers 3?
Yeah, I think so. Just make this easy. Well, okay, so you brought up Zelda 2.
Yeah.
And
I'll let Zelda 2 go quietly into that good night in favor of the original Zelda.
well, okay, that was easy enough.
Right.
Should we be writing?
Here,
this
let me.
down?
I will type them up. Do you have a next point to discuss here?
No, I was ready to really go tete-a-tete with on The Legend of Zelda.
Oh,
How come? I mean, why give up so easily? I guess on Zelda 2.
because I do like the original Zelda, and I see everyone's point that it is a very good game, and that Zelda 2 is maybe more ambitious than it actually ends up delivering. It can be obtuse in a bad
I
way.
feel like there's a little bit of Castlevania 2 in there, where it's just a little too big for its britches.
Yeah, I think that's probably right. And yeah, when it comes down to best of all time, it does seem like there are two titans here that there's no reason they should really be questioned, and the only reason that Zelda is questioned on mine is because, man, I really like Zelda 2. And yeah, that's it. But I will let it go.
Well, here's one that I think we should definitely include that you'll get no pushback from me, even though it's not on my list, is Mega Man 3.
Great.
I think it makes a lot of sense. It's not a series or a game that I have a lot of experience with, but it feels right to me that a Mega Man game would make our list, and Mega Man 3 seems like a good one.
Right. And I want everyone who wrote in with Mega Man 2 to feel heard. Mega Man 2 or 3 was going to end up on this list no matter what. And I think the scholars will be debating forever which of these two games is the stronger Mega Man game. I am, whether you knew this before or not, I am in the camp that Mega Man 3 is the superior game. And so, it's partially my show, so I'm putting it on the list.
Well, talking about, we have a lot of threequels on here.
Yes.
And
Castlevania?
How do you feel about Castlevania 3, Dracula's Curse? In my opinion, the best Castlevania game on the NES. Which I don't think is a particularly controversial opinion.
No, I don't think so either, but people do have a soft spot for Simon's Quest and the first one for whatever reason.
The first one I get, it's like the original game. It's like the Super Mario Brothers.
Yeah.
Where it's a really great game, laid a really solid foundation, but Castlevania 3 just embellishes it to a point. I mean, I think it's one of the best Castlevania games, period.
And is the inspiration for that Netflix series we so tolerate. Yeah, I don't know about.
Because how do you feel about? Because
the original Castlevania is my Castlevania game.
Oh,
I don't have any.
But like
of them
Castlevania is like a series you don't feel like strongly about. Is that right?
That's correct. So I would like to revisit it. I think it's a strong pick.
Okay. Fair. That's fair.
But yes, let's revisit. Do you have let's talk DuckTales and Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers.
Okay.
Because I think this is important, and I do think one of these games should be on our final list.
I agree.
I know none of our listeners said one of these games, but I think they're important.
I think they're important as well.
So what is the value of Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers?
It has co-op.
Sure does.
It is. That's pretty much all I got.
Okay.
It has like all the presentational polish of the other Capcom licensed platformers. I don't have the love that other people have for the DuckTales game.
Mm-hmm.
And but Chip and Dale is like the one that I glommed onto, and so that's why I made my list over DuckTales.
So the reason that DuckTales wins out for me is that the actual moment-to-moment gameplay of DuckTales, well, it is a solitary experience and not a co-op one, is so much more engaging. It doesn't make any sense that Scrooge McDuck is able to hop around on his cane like a pogo stick, but it is such a fluid and interesting, just like I was saying about the Messenger on Tuesday's show. thing that combines like the combat and the mobility of the game, that it is just so rewarding. And it's kind of a short, snappy game. 6 levels, and then you get like one more like boss level where you revisit the Transylvania castle in a little bit different context. Um, yeah, it just seems like very tight to me.
Well, and one thing that Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers definitely sacrifices because it's a co-op game is speed. It's much slower
Yeah.
paced. There's
You spend a lot of time picking up an apple on one side of the screen, throwing it at a robot dog on the other side of the screen.
You do. You spend a lot of time doing that.
So where are we with this?
I mean, I think you make a compelling case for DuckTales.
It's also got that moon music.
It has that moon music. So that being said, I'm going to lobby pretty hard to put Castlevania 3 on this list.
Mark, I will make that concession right now.
Okay.
What is the next battleground?
Let's see. I have Maniac Mansion on my list. I don't even know if you have like an analog that we could put up against one another.
Well, okay, so
it's such a singular experience.
I'm going back to my list right now. And I feel like Star Tropics, Battletoads, and Ninja Turtles are not going to make it onto this final list. And I am fine with that. Those are games that are important and dear to me, but I'm not going to like necessarily fight to put them on the list.
How many do we have on our like definitive list right now?
5.
Oh my gosh! So there's only room.
There's
for 3
only
more
room
games?
for 3 more games.
Oh
Super
boy!
Mario the list so far is Super Mario Brothers 3, The Legend of Zelda, Mega Man 3, Castlevania 3, and DuckTales. So,
okay, so I'm gonna be your Samwise.
Okay.
And I'm going to say, don't give up on Star Tropics so easily.
All right.
Like the other two, yeah, throw those babies out.
Don't you dare talk about Battletoads that way. But okay. All right. Star Tropics, I will keep in the wings here.
Because I have Duck Hunt on my list, and listeners wrote in with Duck Hunt, but I can see the Duck Hunt does not really belong in the list of the 8 best.
My heart was softening to Duck Hunt.
Oh, really?
As we were reading all those
Okay,
people.
so maybe Duck Hunt is my Star Tropics. I will not throw it out so quickly.
Right. Also, we could have 2 duck games on here.
Okay, so Tetris and Dr. Mario.
Yeah.
So far, we have no representation for puzzle games at all.
Right.
There are many great puzzle games,
including
on the
Wario's
NES.
Woods, which was mentioned earlier.
And Yoshi.
And Yoshi's Cookie and The Adventures of Lolo. Like, there are a lot of good puzzle games on this machine.
So I feel like they deserve some sort of representation.
Right. Oh, that's it?
That's it. That's as far as I go. Like, Tetris is Tetris. But I associate it more with Game Boy.
Absolutely.
Than I do with the NES.
Yeah, if we're ever making a top 8 Game Boy games.
Oh, and you bet we will someday.
Oh, someday. There are only so many things we can talk about. But we can't talk about this one thing for like an hour and a half. Yeah, I agree with where the logic is headed there, that Tetris is maybe not something I actually associate with the NES. I think another thing to note in Dr. Mario's favor is it has a lot of personality. The 3 distinct designs of the viruses, the fact that they like
fall over when you like defeat one of them,
and,
yeah,
like,
throw a
kick
little
around for a little
tantrum,
bit, and that they like dance around in this little circle slowly under Mario's microscope. It's so funny and so cute. Sarah was playing Dr. Mario, and she likes to play it on slow, because you have more time to like really. It becomes a different game when you play it on slow. But when you beat level 20 on slow, it doesn't show you like the if you beat it on any other speed, it's like all the viruses in a tree and then like a bird flies by and the music is like whatever. But if you beat it on slow, it's just like congratulations, level 20 slow, against like a black backdrop. And then there's this really, really janky music, which I'm gonna look up now actually, as we're talking, and it's so funny that it's like a slight celebration, but not like it doesn't give you the real celebration.
Right, it's like a half-hearted like, you did it.
Yeah, you did it. Slow 20 clear. My point is the game has a ton of personality in addition to being just an amazing puzzle game. So for that reason, I'm gonna suggest that it goes on our final list.
Yeah, so that leaves us with 2 spots. Is that right?
Yep, that's right.
Okay. So here's where I struggle. Is we have no JRPG on this list.
Right. Keep going.
Well, so the listeners gave it up for Final Fantasy, for the original Final Fantasy. But I have Dragon Quest or Dragon Warrior 3. And that's kind of my pick because Final Fantasy was the first Final Fantasy, that is true, but very unrefined.
Yeah, for sure. And like super clunky, and there's like a stat that doesn't even exist, right? Like the accuracy stat. It it doesn't
Do anything?
It doesn't do anything. So yeah, I would say that it would be a little bit dishonest to put Final Fantasy on here. I think Dragon Quest 3 is a good pick. It is the one where I feel like I'm putting it on there because I know that it's a good game and not because
It's my Mega Man 3.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. This is great.
Lots of 3s.
Tons of 3s.
But that makes sense though, because the NES was like a lot of having an idea, and then the second game being like, let's do something totally different.
Right.
And then the third game being like, oh, we kind of figured out what this should be.
We're finally there.
It's like the Indiana Jones series. Although really I'll defend Temple of Doom, but that's not for this podcast. That's for a 433.
Okay, so I've found this music. Let me play it.
It's like a little out of tune, a little atonal.
Isn't that great?
That's really funny.
It's like rhythmically weird, and like the harmony sort of falls apart. Like, let's listen to it again.
It's like when a child is like just learning piano
Yes.
and they're playing a recognizable melody, but they don't have the timing right.
Yeah.
That's really funny.
Yeah, and it's like, oh, congratulations, you cleared it.
Oh,
on
you
slow.
did it. Yeah.
So our list so far, Mark, is Super Mario Bros. 3, The Legend of Zelda, Mega Man 3, Castlevania 3, DuckTales, Dr. Mario, Dragon Warrior 3. That is 7 games. The final game could be Star Tropic.
Could be Maniac Mansion.
Probably not going to be Maniac Mansion.
It kind of should be Maniac
Yeah, but
Mansion.
I mean, it's probably not going to be.
Yeah, but it got a little,
Yeah, but like,
little
I
bit,
don't
like
just,
a little
did
bit. It
anyone
should be.
else even mention the Lucasfilm game?
No, LucasArts game.
LucasArts, sorry.
But like, there is no other game on this list like Maniac Mansion.
Right, except for Star Tropics.
Not like Maniac Mansion at all.
Right. Except it's they both have dialogue.
No, not in the same way. Not even close. Now, the one thing I will say is that Maniac Mansion is a port.
Sure.
It is not an original game, and I think everything else that we have on our list is was created for the NES.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder if at this point there's anything that we go back into our listeners' lists.
I mean, Duck Hunt.
Duck Hunt.
That would be the
Duck Hunt is
I
good
think the one that
candidate
has
here.
like the most consensus.
Yeah. I think I can live with that.
I guess I can live with it too.
You feel bad about Maniac Mansion not being on here?
No, actually, I feel worse about Star Tropics not being on
Really?
here.
It's on my list, not yours.
I know, but like
You thought I would fight harder for it.
well, I know how much it means to you. I thought it was a sure bet, basically.
Oh wow! Whoa! I mean, here's the thing. I know we don't do honorable mentions. There's no such thing as second place when it comes to this list.
Yeah, so should you even finish this thought?
No. Duck Hunt will be the last game on the list. Mark, I'm going to speak the list to you.
Okay.
And this will be our last opportunity to make any changes to this list.
That's right.
After such time, it is definitive and locked in place. the list
Mhm.
of the 8 best NES games of all time in no particular order. Super Mario Bros. 3, The Legend of Zelda, Mega Man 3, Castlevania 3, DuckTales, Dr. Mario, Dragon Warrior 3, and Duck Hunt.
Oh, it's like it makes so much sense, but it feels a little bit wrong.
Tell me what
I don't know.
What feels wrong?
I can't
What
explain
feels
it.
wrong?
I can't explain it. Like, this is one of those things where like I wish I had more time to suss this out, but we don't.
We don't. This is it.
This is it. And
This
for
is
that
the-
reason,
Mhm.
you can't see it, but Patrick and I are shaking hands. I believe
Yep.
we did it, sir.
We did a great job here. Mark, I'm exhausted. Let's close out this segment.
Because here's the thing about definitive lists.
Yes.
You're not always going to be happy.
Right.
And dear listener, if you are not happy with our definitive list, we would love to hear about it. We're not going to change anything.
Because the list is definitive, but you should write into us at Nintendo Cartridge Society
At gmail.com.
I believe someone should take us to task for us not including Metroid on this list. I believe everything that I said about it.
We knew what we were doing. We did it in good faith.
Right? And if anyone writes in saying, hey, you should reconsider putting Kid Icarus on that list, I say no.
Yeah, don't try that.
Look, the 3D classic version of that game is great. As it exists on the NES, it is borderline unplayable. Do not play it. But thank you everyone so much for participating. That was a fun list to make and super fun to read everyone's thoughts on that. Mark, let's get out of here. Remember, rate, review, subscribe, do all that good stuff. Apple Podcasts helps us out tremendously. Follow us on Twitter. I'm at Patrick_Ellers. Mark is at MKE Mitchell. The show is at Nin Cart Society. We're on Facebook as well, which is easy and obvious to do. Olivia Duncan made our logo. Our theme music is provided by 8-Bit Betty. If you would like more of his music, you can go to 8bitbetty.com or you can listen right now. For my co-host, Mark Mitchell, this is Patrick Ellers playing co-op Bubble Bobble with Mark and saying thanks for listening.
Hi, I'm Sunny Hutz. Listen to my new show, Mystery Solver, where we solve the mysteries in my crazy life. I know what you're thinking. Another formulaic podcast ad. But what if there was a mystery to solve in this very promo?
Sonny, we don't have time for that. Just tell them to subscribe wherever they get their podcast.
Oh, shoot. Well, the solution was I don't remember stealing her car because I was sleepwalking.
Campfire.